What a holiday weekend we just had. And I'm not talking about the 4th of July. I'm talking about the release of the final 2 episodes of season 4 of Stranger Things. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Nerdy 430, the podcast where we talk about nerdiest things for 30-ish minutes. My name is Kevin Bauer. With me, as always, is my co-host, Tim Keck. And when it comes to season 4 of Stranger Things, as soon as I saw D&D in that first episode, I knew exactly who we needed to have. He's our friend. He's my dungeon master forever. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Flaherty. Brian, how you doing?
Well, hi there. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I'm very excited to talk about Stranger Things. Spoiler alert, love the show.
So yeah, I was trying to remember. You have watched all along, right? Or did you catch up before season 4 came out?
Yeah, no, I watched from the beginning. I remember like when it first came out, I think I happened to get sick that weekend back in, 4 or 5 years ago and binged it in like one sitting. And it was fantastic. That was the thing that happened that summer was Stranger Things.
Oh, it was amazing. It's a sensation. And I thought this season overall was sensational. Do you guys agree?
Oh, yeah.
I think they shouldn't call it Stranger Things. They should call it more of the same things. And you know what? That's not a complaint. I love it. I don't give a shit. They could just release season 5, could just be season 4 again. And I'd still be like, hell yeah, man. Nancy Wheeler, she's got a gun. Okay, Eleven's going to hold out her hand and scream, and that's going to stop the bad guy. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, I don't care. This is fun. Like, it's this. I don't know. I don't know why. I do have beefs with this. Like, it's not the perfect thing, but I love it. I just love this show. It's great. I want 20 more hours, please. ASAP. This
was definitely for me the best season since season 1. I think season 1 was its own like great thing. Season 2 and 3 were cool moments, but it was a lot of kind of treading water because every time you got to the end of the season, it would be like, oh, there's a new portal. We closed the portal. There was a new monster, but no answers were forthcoming. It was just like more mystery. Finally now in season 4, they're actually starting to pick apart like mysteries and like showing you where origin stories started, actually answering some of the questions. And that just gets you to dive even deeper in because now you finally can start to like piece together the puzzles that they've just been adding more pieces to over the past 3 seasons.
Dude, isn't it wonderful? I feel like it reeks of when a good story, when you start off with like a story that is good and well thought out, the characters and the events of the story are playing by rules that are defined, even if we don't know what the rules are yet. So like the big one that we've talked about a lot, Tim and I, is Harry Potter, how it starts off and the series is very soft magic. We don't know anything about how the magic works. And the magic gets a little bit harder as it goes on. We learn a little bit more about the way that the magic itself works, not as much as some other series, but there's more grit to it. And there's more depth than we had in the very beginning. But the very beginning of this story, it still seemed like it played by those rules. I totally feel that here. Like we're learning about how the portals opened. Everything feels very consistent. It all makes sense.
It does feel very consistent, but then I think that's a great point, Brian, is like now they're starting to answer questions. But now that they're finally answering questions, I think there's more people being like, does this really make sense? Does this really all line up? And I think for the most part it does. But I think maybe this is where the rubber meets the road, where there's like, oh, there's actual things that with this where I'm like, okay, this is weird. Why is this happening? What is, the fact, I guess I'm saying I feel like I could be more nitpicky with this season than the other seasons because the other seasons didn't even bother answering any questions. And this season they started doing that. So now they've opened the door to be judged because they're finally making those like choices. Does that make sense?
I think this is kind of where Game of Thrones had a problem towards the end because like all the seasons of Game of Thrones, they just kept going further out and out and out and out, like different sprawling storylines. And you could just like it was building upon the world. And then when they had to come together to a point at the very end, like tell the final scene, there's only so many places it could go. So it was always going to be a bit unsatisfying. The problem with season 2 and 3 of Stranger Things was rather than continuing to expand outwards, they just stopped where season 1 ended and just continued on a parallel path, just going endlessly forward. And now we're finally getting that point where it's coming together. There's actually some like change happening. There's new stuff. We're learning new information.
Oh my God. Yeah. But they still managed to, I guess, draw back in some of the things that they had spread out with. Like we did see, what's her name, Judy again, Dustin's girlfriend, and they did expand out. Robin's a terrific addition. I swear they had to be so pissed when the first part of the season came out and everybody loved Eddie so much. They had to be so pissed that they killed him off. Like, oh, what a brutal moment.
I got to say, killing off Eddie, as much as it was like a cool scene, his like guitar solo on top of the house was amazing. That's my beef for the season. Killing off Eddie Munson. Oh, bummer. bummer. And also like, it was a cool death, kind of. It was like cool death adjacent because he got to do his really cool thing and he just kind of got killed by bats in a way that didn't really matter. Like I knew he was drawing things away, but it kind of didn't matter. It kind of just felt like he died for nothing a little bit. Really, I think I'm just bummed to see him go. It was by far his introduction in the first episode as like the crazy dungeon master, which of course me playing a ton of Dungeons and Dragons and being a dungeon master, I was thrilled to see. It's so cool. And then, I guess he got his arc. He got to, save some people and he got to play his guitar solo.
I mean, he's for sure the thief of this season. Like he came in, he has this one season. Oh, yeah. And he is going to be one of the most memorable characters from the entire series.
I do really love there's a literary device or like a device in play. Device used in play is called Chekhov's gun. And the idea is if you see a gun mounted on the wall in Act 1, you have to fire that gun by Act 3. And they really set that up with his guitar. Cause like the first episode, you see him like the guitar is mounted on the wall. He like kisses it and strokes it. And then in the last episode, he's like strumming that guitar and like killing bats with it. So goofy and fun of like a little nugget there.
I think I'm constantly impressed by Stranger Things is like the ability for them to create new characters. Like Billy was great before this. I thought I was all in on Billy. Even like the basketball player that was like kind of like the bad guy for this season. It's funny how in the first episode, I think I made this case on the last pod that the basketball player starts out as like a pretty good guy and Eddie starts off as like kind of a dick and like an asshole. And you're like, oh, this guy's it's clearly a good guy and a bad guy. And then by the end, they were flipped. I would say probably a little too extreme. I don't know why we're all like excited to see that this basketball player who was like a pretty nice dude whose girlfriend died and all he wants is justice for her. And he's somehow getting split in half and I feel good about it. I don't know. It's weird. It's a little weird, but they're still making up all this stuff, coming up with new characters, which I love. It got me thinking about, well, two thoughts about Eddie, but I'm going to go with this one. Who are you guys rooting for in the big Stranger Things love triangle? Are we a Steve Harrington crew? Are we a Jonathan Myers crew? Who are we rooting for with this?
They really turned against Nancy and Jonathan this season. They just like took Jonathan they took Jonathan down a peg. They were like, no, thank you. We're going to make you a pothead. You're going to be doing nothing. And then they made Steve Harrington like, oh, he's grown up. Look how cool he is now. Honestly, like they kind of got me though. I'm kind of on Team Steve now, and I had not been for 3 seasons, but they shoved it down my throat and I'm eating it.
Kevin, Team Steve, Team Jonathan.
Oh man, I was Team Steve this whole season. I was ready to be like, fuck Jonathan. This dude, he's keeping stuff from Nancy. They clearly aren't working out. It's okay. It's young love. It doesn't have to work out. They're going to learn from this relationship and do better later. And then by the time Nancy and Steve kind of falls through in a way that I think makes a lot of sense in the final episode, and you see Nancy and Jonathan together again, I think I'm Team Jonathan overall. I kind of like Steve, he doesn't get exactly what he wants. He realized he made a mistake, but that doesn't make the mistake go away. He's got to kind of go off on his own and find himself again. I like Lone Wolf Steve, and I like Jonathan and Nancy.
That's where I landed too, is I'm Team Steve, and I think he's too good for Nancy. All right. I don't see what the appeal is. I don't see why Steve is the shining star of this town. He's bigger than all of them. Steve deserves his own thing. And you know what? I was like, what's a satisfying conclusion for Steve. Maybe it's him riding off into the sunset by himself, or maybe it's these amazing Stranger Things writers, casting directors. I don't know who it is that invents these new characters, but are we going to get a new like love interest for Steve next season? Would it be satisfying for a someone introduced in the last season to sweep Steve Harrington off his feet?
Steve's going to become like a Matthew Perry-esque inspirational teacher. Like that's what that's his final arc. He's going to be in a Lifetime original movie. Matthew Perry will be starring him. Matthew Perry will star as him because he inspired so many kids with his unconventional teaching methods. That's Steve Harrington at the end of his life.
Oh my
Eddie,
God.
The Eddie talk also got me thinking about my biggest beef, Kevin. This is my biggest beef in the show. Yes.
Where's the beef?
I love Dustin. Dustin's great. He's a very fun character. He's a good guy. He's a good time. When he laughs, I laugh. When he cries, I also laugh. Is the problem? he is. This is the worst limp I've ever seen an actor do on screen, on stage, on anything. Him limping at the end of this show is the funniest shit I've ever seen in my life. He's so bad at it. He can't limp. He like hurt his ankle, and the actor did. What is this, Gadden? He's just violently like a hunchback serving like Igor in like a castle. He's like hobbling around, and he can't sit. He has to be like up and going places, and he's trying to tell Eddie's uncle that Eddie died. And the whole time he's like got this horrible limp where he's like can barely stand somehow, but he's still like walking around, and it's just so bad. And then he's just telling the uncle like, hey man, this is how Eddie died. And the uncle, no follow-up questions. Dustin was there when your nephew died. He said he fought bravely. What did he fight bravely? It was a fucking earthquake.
Yes. I also thought that too.
You're not going to ask any questions from this weird ass limping kid who comes up out of nowhere, says your nephew died bravely, and then just like walks off or like hops off.
Died bravely in a fight.
Hey, if Eddie had it his way, that earthquake never would have happened. He fought tooth and nail to keep that ground from shaking.
It just that whole scene with Dustin, and then he like limps out of the school. Just every time he limped, I was just like, I can't take this. This is all dumb. This is all bullshit. This is the worst. It's the one part of the show where I was like, fuck this. This is stupid. This is let that guy just be fun. I don't know. I was just so out on the whole thing. It was just so weird and fake to my. They just phoned it in. They just phoned in like the last 10 minutes of Dustin's scene.
I think in the actor's defense, the character was suffering from unspecified injury. We didn't see what happened. He hit the ground and he screamed, and then he was moving around still. We had no idea what it was. What was it,
ACL, shattered ankle?
Dude, when you have something that egregious, like Will's bowl cut or this limp, I say you fucking lean into it. Season 5, whole time. I want to see that bowl cut every single second Will's on screen in season 5. I want a 4-year time jump and Will's still rocking that bowl cut. And I want Dustin limping for the rest of his life.
Dustin never recovers from a 6-foot drop.
But Max, totally fine.
Yeah, Max can come back.
Max, I do think long-term injuries.
Max got fucked up. Dude, Max got fucked
That was the thief moment for me.
Oh, well.
I think you're a thief.
I mean, that was, name another piece of media where you have the climactic moment where the protagonist is rushing to save someone from like a certain doom, and the person still kind of suffers from that doom. The only other example that I can think of.
She got snapped like twigs, my dude.
She didn't
die. Her eyes
die.
are bleeding. What do you mean she kind of got?
Look, the kind of is taken out of context.
Right now. She got lit the fuck up. She's a vegetable right now. She's not waking up for season 5.
not only like, in the media, but think this is a child this is happening to in the world.
Yeah.
Like,
She's like 15 years old.
when she floated in the air, I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going to happen. They're going to rush and they're going to save her just in time. When the first limb snapped, I was like, holy shit, they're going to do this? They're going to do this? And then they got they got 3 out of 4, man.
The only other time that we see something progress that far is if the character goes on to be like perma-dead. I know she died temporarily before 11 brought her back, but like that's a situation where it's like I'm never used to seeing the character that they're trying to save still get hit with whatever they were trying to save them from. The only other time that I can think about it was Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight. And in that case, they didn't know they were saving Harvey anyway. So like he still got hit with half of the burning fuel or whatever, but like it would be like if he was trying to save Rachel Dawes and Rachel Dawes got burnt in half. Crazy that they did this. I love it. This was one of the first ones. We talk about this with Game of Thrones too. It's one of the first shows that I'd ever seen where you genuinely worry about the protagonist's safety because anybody could die at any moment. Like somebody could die 6 minutes into episode 3. They don't wait for big like cliffhangers or anything like that. Stranger Things is like that for me now. Anybody can just get fucked up.
Okay, who are your like least expendable characters though? Because I realized once it was happening, I was like, oh, Max can't die. I refuse to live in a world where Max does not live in Stranger Things. She's up there for me. I feel like Steve at this point, I'd be devastated. Yeah. Everyone else, like, fuck them. Like, let's see it. Let's see what happens when Mike dies. Let's see what happens when, I like Lucas. I want to keep Lucas around. Lucas and Will should probably stay. Everyone else, just like, let's see what happens. What, like 11 needs another loss, right? Like, I feel like Mike's dead. Mike's dead in the next season for sure.
I do think Steve dying would be like the most traumatic one. That one would hurt. He had such a redemption arc. Like he was one of the characters I cared about the least, like episode 1, season 1, and now is the character I'm most invested in. And they like just kept building him up season after season. And that one would hurt. That one would hurt about as much as Eddie Munson. Eddie Munson hurt pretty bad.
Dude, I think Steve is toast. They made me realize in the upside down part of this season how vulnerable he is. They played the thing in the movie Ford v Ferrari, which is based on true events. So I don't think this is a spoiler. There's a moment where Christian Bale's character is having a really sweet talk with his kid. And they do this like pull my finger joke. And in another really dramatic moment, they do the pull my finger joke to lighten the tension. But it's such like a good dad moment that as soon as that happened, not knowing the true events going into the movie, I was like, oh, fuck, he dies in the end. It was too sweet of a moment for him to not die in the end. We got there with Steve this season. I was convinced Steve was going to die. Because he didn't this time, I feel like Steve is a sacrificial lamb going into the climax of season 5. Steve is gonna fucking die, dude.
I could see Steve like sacrifice, like noble sacrifice to save everybody. Like 11 can't do it. It can only be Steve.
Yeah.
That would hurt though. If really
the whole show comes down to Steve saving the day and then dying heroically, this would simultaneously be the best show ever and an unforgivable tragedy. I think it would be incredible.
It would be devastating. I feel like 11 might die in season 5 as well. I feel like they can totally pull like a sacrificial.
I think at this point, I'd be fine, but it's tedious a little bit.
It is wild the characters that like I cared about immensely in season like Mike and 11, like I cared about a lot in season 1. Nancy and Hopper, I cared about a lot in season 1. Now that we're in season 4, like I don't care about any of those characters. And like now it's Steve, it's Nancy, and it's Max, and then Eddie. Like those are the people I care about, and I look like Steve and what's Gaetan's character's name?
Dustin.
Oh, Dustin.
Oh, yeah. Steve and Dustin, like, those are the homies for life.
I do not think they can kill Dustin. I think Dustin is like the one, maybe like the one truly safe person.
I think so. I think
Mike's dad, he's safe. He's too much of a dick.
Dude, Mike's dad is the villain of the show. Mike's dad is so goddamn funny. God, I love everything about Mike's dad.
Every scene he's in, I'm like, yeah, you nailed this guy.
Oh, man.
I got a question for you guys. So we did a podcast on part 1 of this season already. So I want to get your opinion on how this functions as a part 2. Brian, we talked about this off mic about how fun the anticipation was that they had split it up this way, because I timed it out. And if they had released all of the episodes 1 a week, it still would have ended this past weekend. So, all we really did is we had the first dropper on Memorial Day, and then they made us wait just a little over a month, right, before we got the other one. I found it super effective in terms of getting me excited. Did you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, I definitely feel it was a very good balance between the binge model and the weekly model, because you did get these 2 big things to binge, but you do get that anticipation of like the cliffhanger season finale without the like true pain of waiting a whole year and a half, 2 years for that next season. I really liked it. I could see more shows, and I know a lot of shows are doing that kind of like half season thing, which I'm not a huge fan. Like they're doing these like 7-episode mini seasons like twice a year, which is okay. I really like this Stranger Things model. It felt like an event, especially since it's like Stranger Things feels like a very summer show. It feels like a very like 4th of July show. It was really nice to like have that short break, hit July, and get this 4-hour finale that was like, it really, the last 2 episodes really delivered. Like it was a like nonstop go fest the whole time. And it was great. I think it was great.
Tim, do you agree?
Yeah, I got a little COVID throat acting up for a second. I think it's like the laugh track, where it's like everyone always hates the laugh track, but it's been proven that the laugh track makes people laugh more. Like you on a subconscious level, you're like, okay, this is good for me. This is vegetables. It's I don't want to eat it, but my body feels better when I do. And that's how I feel about like splitting up the Stranger Things, episodes. Is like, I totally could have binged them all. Also, I was excited about it. I couldn't wait for it. It was probably the right move. Binging like 12 hours is a lot harder than binging, 7 or 8 and then like 4. So it's definitely the right move from like Netflix's perspective. Yeah, it's also just kind of crazy what a monolith Stranger Things is. Like everybody is watching this show. Like Kate Bush has like the #1 song on the planet right now. It's like, that's crazy. I was on like Spotify and Metallica's trending. It's insane.
That scene with running up that hill is going to go down as like one of the best musical accompaniment scenes like of all time. Like I should really try to think of what other good ones are, but like that is iconic for the season. That's iconic for this series. Like I think that goes up there with like that song is probably only second to the blinking lights, the Christmas lights on the wall from season 1. Like if you think of one Stranger Things image, it's the lights on the wall that like everyone did in their college dorm room that Halloween. I think the second thing is going to be that scene of running up that hill. Like that song will always and forever be associated with that scene from Stranger Things.
Dude, every business that I went into this past weekend, running up that hill played at least once. Like, yes, that is a massive, massive, massive cultural sensation. The closest thing I can think of offhand is when the first Guardians of the Galaxy came out. And scene wise, you have the like dance to Redbone in the very beginning of it. Leon Redbone, not Childish Gambino, although that would be a wild scene. And then just like how every song from that soundtrack was all over the place that summer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a difference between Metallica? What is it? Master of Puppets? Is that the one that plays?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Running Up the Hill, they're different scenes, but like Metallica, Running Up the Hill scratches an itch where I'm like, I don't think I've really heard this song before. I definitely have, but I don't think I've heard it before. Whereas Metallica hits the note of like, oh, I used to listen to this all the time.
Yeah, I think Kate Bush scratches that itch of something but kind of forgot. And also that scene is like, it's so tense that it's like this escape. it honestly feels like it might not happen. Like I could have seen that scene going the other way. Like you get this epic song and you still don't make it out. Cause that's kind of what they do in the end. Like they still get Max. But the Master of Puppets is just kind of like a really badass accompaniment to a fight scene that you kind of always know is going to end it didn't feel as tense. I think it's still a very cool scene, but I don't think Master of Puppets is going to be associated with Stranger Things in the same way that Run Up That Hill will be.
For sure.
100% agree. I think they did update it to like, or at least Spotify opened up like a Stranger Things graphic or like whatever, like a little video, like a Stranger Things video changes for it, which I was kind of like, okay, Metallica cashing in on this Stranger Things money. They know what people are looking for. It's just kind of crazy to me that they're like, okay, we're going to play this song. Metallica, legendary rock band. We're going to play this song and it's going to blow you up again. And people are going to be listening to this and they're going to be coming to it because of Stranger Things. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy how big Stranger Things is.
I did
really
see someone tweeted at Metallica saying like, oh, sorry, guys, there's all these like fake Metallica fans coming to you. And Metallica, or whoever runs their social media account, tweeted back saying like, no, it's totally cool. Like if you like Master of Puppets, I bet you're going to like a bunch of our stuff. Like check it out. Basically saying like, hey, you're new to Metallica, come on in. And it's like one fucking gatekeeper dweeb. Yeah, right. Hey,
that's the best way. It's wonderful.
We like money.
It welcomes people in. I mean, hell, I started listening to them for the first time after Zombieland. Like that scene in the opening of Zombieland where they're playing For Whom the Bell Tolls. That was my first big Metallica moment.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things too with that scene, it's like, as someone who hadn't heard it before, I will always associate For Whom the Bell Tolls with the Zombieland opening. And I definitely think that's the case for most people for Kate Bush. It was like, I'm a little bit uppity about it because it was on one of my playlists and it was always like a secret weapon track where it's like, this song goes so fucking hard. It is not in the popular consciousness. Like you drop that on a playlist and people are going to love it and be like, oh yeah, what was that one? And now it is like going to be one of the most popular songs forever.
I actually have a playlist that is specifically like songs that I associate with TV and movies. Mm-hmm. And these are some of my favorites. You can easily cut this for time.
Oh, this is great.
Wild World by Cat Stevens. Ooh, baby, baby, it's a wild world. From the like crazy ending of Skins season 1. Life on Mars by David Bowie from
Skins
the show.
season 1. There's so many. Wild World is bigger than Skins. I'm just going to say that right here. If this is a bunch of Cat Stevens blasphemy, I'm not here for it, Brian.
No, I'm telling you. So Skins was like a good show. And then the last scene of season 1, spoilers for Skins season 1, is Tony, the main character played by, what's his name? Timothy Holt, played by Nicholas Holt, gets hit by a bus. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like a show that's never broken like reality, just everyone starts to sing and they start to sing Cat Stevens' Wild World. Anyway, I Can't Stand the Rain by Ann Peebles from High Fidelity, the show. After Hours by We Are the Scientists from Nick Norris' Infinite Playlist. Salisbury Hill from the end of Halt and Catch Fire. The Impression That I Get by the Mighty Mighty Bosstones from the Digimon movie. Oh yeah.
These are pretty deep cut shows.
These are also like the 5th time a lot of these songs have been used in like a movie or TV show, I feel like. Wasn't Salisbury Hill written for that rom-com that nobody watched that I didn't like?
I don't know. My number one is a song called This Bitter Earth by Dinah Washington that was played in a scene but in this famous like kind of experimental film called Killer of Sheep. And it's just these two people dancing in slow motion. And that song will haunt me forever because of that scene. And I think this is a long journey just to say that scene will now be iconic in television history.
Hell yeah, man. They earned it. And I love that they, that callback that they had in part 2, where it was the Stranger Things theme mashed up with Running Up That Hill. I really wonder if they did that, the Stranger Things take on it, after part 1 came out, because I remember an interview with the Duffer Brothers, they said that they were still very much actively working on part 2 the weekend that part 1 came out. That. So I wonder if they were like, they noticed that and they're like, shit, we got to put it back in. People are going to love this.
Yeah. Did they have another song in mind for the finale, or was it just always they just went all in on Kate Bush?
It was going to be
like
Cat Stevens originally.
It was going to be Wild World originally.
It was going to be Wild World.
Ooh, baby, it's a wild
Man, that
world.
scene would have been haunting if it was Wild World.
Dude.
In part 2, or in episode 2 of part 2 of season 4, there was a moment where for like 3 song cues in a row, they were track for track with the Remember the Titans soundtrack. And 2 of the people I was watching it with noticed that. And they were like, wait a minute, holy shit. It would have been incredible if they just committed to like, yeah, and the soundtrack for episode 2 is just Remember the Titans.
Well, let's be very clear here. You were watching it with 2 other people, and 3 people that you were watching with total knew the Remember the Titans soundtrack well enough to realize, oh, this 3-song set list is from the Remember the Titans soundtrack.
Nuts. I myself wasn't there.
What
So
were the
of the 4
songs?
people in the room, 2.
Oh, it's an amazing soundtrack.
It was around the
Link in the
time
show
when they
notes.
hijacked the van. I think there's CCR playing when they hijack the Winnebago and start driving.
Yeah, I think so.
And then the next sound cue after that, and I think one more, were like, boom, 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 Remember the Titans, which is just very funny.
I don't think it's in Remember the Titans, but there's a Journey song in there.
Yes.
That
Open Arms.
I didn't love that. I didn't love that sound cue. That was my take on it. Maybe I just listened to too much Journey, but I was just like, it was just like so high. It was like so high energy, and it ends with them walking into the house. I think that was that the ending of last season, or was that the ending of like, that might have been the ending of the second to last episode.
I think that was the ending of, the second last episode.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit of a weird choice, but they made it like creepy enough and operatic enough by the end. So they twinged it just enough that I was like, oh, this is kind of creepy to hear. Oh man, I can't remember the lead singer's voice.
Don't
Steve Perry?
you? Love
Steve Perry.
will find you. Yeah,
yeah.
Steve Perry. Love will find you. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Break those chains that bind you.
I'm like, I don't know if this really makes the set. Love will find you, and they're entering a haunted house to fight a bad guy. I'm like, okay, it's all right. Running up the hill is like so powerful. It's just hard to, I don't know. It's hard to follow that up, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Really running up that hill just had the perfect sound of like 80s synth pop.
Mm-hmm.
That it just feels like it was written for like the style of Stranger Things. I wouldn't be surprised if they had that in their like, whiteboard playlist all the way from like when they started. They would be like, oh, this is our inspiration for the whole show.
Yeah.
This sound.
They've just been waiting to afford the rights to probably a very affordable song.
Not anymore.
Oh,
No one
definitely
wants it
not
anymore.
anymore.
It's done. You can't use it now without it
is
being
done.
a callback.
Yeah.
I got a question for you guys.
It's no Wild World where you can just throw it into every movie, every chance you
I
get.
stand by that one. I'm gonna send you that. I'm gonna send you that scene. You know what?
Send me the scene. I do want to watch it.
I'm gonna send you a box set of season 1 of Skins because you kind of got to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's great.
Oh man. Did you guys I think my last question is, they have been exposed to the Upside Down for a while now. But is anyone else still a little bit troubled that they're walking around in the Upside Down and they're inhaling that like stuff, the ash, whatever's hanging in the air? They're just inhaling it willy-nilly, like it's no problem. Nobody's trying to put a mask on.
All these spores. Yeah, no one's said anything about it. It's a little weird.
Didn't that almost kill Will in the first season? Wasn't that part of it? Or was he just starving to death? Now I'm like, oh, he was gone for a month.
I think he was
like,
just starving or
he
something.
could have starved to death. But wasn't it killing him? Like, wasn't he sick?
I
Like
thought
from that?
so. Maybe he's just in there eating bats, or like he had to go raid fridges that had been upside down for like a month.
Yeah.
I know we only have a couple minutes left. Do we want to talk about the like 2-day time jump that felt a little weird at the very end?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it felt like a 2-day time jump before like a 2-month time jump. I was like, this is it? Only 2 days? You could have just walked out of here and nothing would have changed. But I guess they needed everybody to come together and they needed 2 days to do it.
I do always like seeing the stuff that happens like right after the big thing happens. But it did feel weird that like for the past, 4 hours of this, 2-episode finale, it was just go, 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 push, 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 tension, tension, tension. And then big climactic scene happens, they lose, and then we cut to 2 days later and everyone's just like, it's bright and sunny out now. Everyone's just like helping out at the gymnasium.
Limping
It felt
around.
a little weird. Like, I think it was correct to do it, but it felt weird. I guess I'm happy with it, but it did feel weird in the moment.
Did you think that flow nicely with all the superhero poses at the end of the movie where they all look like fucking Marvel characters getting ready to suit up and fight a bad guy? Like they all look like superheroes out there. Like incredible blocking in the final scenes of them just looking out at the town slowly burning to death or whatever. Whatever's going on with it. I have no idea what's going on with the town.
Standing in a field full of flowers that were propagated from Willy Wonka's warehouse. It's like, to show that contrast between the dead flowers and the living ones, they made the most unrealistic living flowers I have ever seen. It seemed like where they were standing was the alternate
Sound
dimension.
of Music flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hills were alive, except for the half that was dead from all the terrible stuff that they did in the Upside Down.
Wild shit. I can't wait to see where it goes. Brian, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Love to have you. And you got something relevant to plug too.
I do. I run a number of podcasts, one of them being the 20-Sided Podcast, which is the D&D actual play show. We're in the middle of season 2 right now. Kevin was actually one of the players in season 1, escaped from the RMS Titanfall. It's an 11-episode arc. Check it out. But I run a second podcast called... It's great stuff. I run a second podcast called My First Dungeon, which they are 3-episode series. In episode 1, I take a new dungeon master, teach them how to play. In episode 2, they run their very first game. And then in episode 3, we kind of see how they did and we talk back through. Our season 3 just got released. We're playing a new game a friend of mine wrote called Something Is Wrong with the Chickens. It is a game of poultry, eldritch horrors, and revenge. It is as weird and wacky as it sounds. We just released episode 1. Episodes 2 and 3 will be coming out in the next 2 weeks. They're super fun. And with the sound design, I went very Stranger Things. There's a lot of 80s synth while chickens and ducks with tentacles and scales are trying to take over a state fair. It sounds weird. It absolutely is. I strongly recommend you check it out. It's a great game, and we have a lot of fun playing it.
I'll be listening. Tim, anything else we should add?
In my experience, D&D is just for hoodlums and satanic cultists, and it's for no good people up to no good. So I don't know. I would strongly dissuade anyone from, listening to Brian's podcast, being corrupted by the evil within.
I should say Tim is wearing a full varsity jacket right now, and he is perusing his way through an army thrift store. Man, lost the ability to speak toward the end of the pod. That means it's time. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Nerdy for 30. Make sure to rate us 5 stars on whatever you're listening on. Send us an email, nerdyfor30@gmail.com. Tune into the next episode. And until then, stay nerdy, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Great stuff.
Great stuff.
So, Brian, is this really like a cult thing? You're really playing that scary game from Stranger Things?
Yeah, playing that scary game. It's great.
But isn't it like for devil worshippers and stuff?
Yeah, totally.
Oh.